The woman in red just told me I'm too poor to breathe the same air as my own children in front of 200 people. Her finger is 2 inches from my face, her diamond bracelet catching the chandelier light like a weapon. My twin sons, David and Andrew, are standing behind me in their mall-bought suits, and I can feel them shrinking. What Brenda doesn't know is that 72 hours ago, I opened an email that changed everything. And the envelope in my pocket right now, it's about to turn her perfect night into the most humbling moment of her life. But here's what gets me. This isn't about money. It never was. This is about what happens when someone mistakes their bank account for their character. And in about 3 minutes, when I open this envelope, she's going to learn the difference. Let me take you back to where this really started. Because revenge isn't about what you say. It's about what you know that they don't. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories travel, and it reminds us that hope and second chances are universal languages. Asterisk, asterisk. 72 hours before Brenda Ward destroyed her own empire, I was sitting at my kitchen table doing something most fathers in America know too well. I was gluing the sole back onto Andrew's school shoe. The tube of adhesive cost me $3 at the dollar store. The shoe itself, hand-me-down from David, who'd worn them until the leather cracked. This is the part where I'm supposed to feel sorry for myself, right? Paint the picture of the struggling single dad. But here's what nobody tells you about poverty. It teaches you to see value where others see trash. That glue? It held for 6 more months. Those shoes? They walked my son across the stage at his middle school graduation. I pressed the sole down, counting to 30 like the instructions said when my laptop, a refurbished model I bought off Craigslist, pinged with an email notification. The sender's name made my hand stop mid-count. Whitmore and Associates, estate attorneys. My first thought? Spam. My second thought? Maybe I'm being sued for something I didn't know I did wrong. Because when you're barely keeping your head above water, you assume every official-looking email is another wave trying to drown you. I clicked it open. Dear Mr. Joseph Vasquez, we are writing to inform you of a matter concerning the estate of Mr. Gerald Ward, deceased. As per his final will and testament, executed in 2019 and amended in 2023, you have been named as a beneficiary. Given the sensitive nature of this bequest and its conditions, we request your presence in our offices at your earliest convenience. This matter concerns real property and certain fiduciary responsibilities that require immediate attention. Time is of the essence, as certain parties are currently unaware of these arrangements. I read it 3 times. Then I read it again, because my brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. Gerald Ward, Brenda's father, the man who used to slip me $50 bills when Brenda wasn't looking, back when we were married, the man who told me at our wedding, "You're the best thing that ever happened to my daughter, son. Don't let her forget that." The man who died 2 years ago, and whose funeral Brenda didn't even tell me about until 3 months later, in a text message that simply said, "Dad's gone. Don't contact me about it." Why would he leave me anything? We weren't related. I had no claim to his estate, unless the phrase, "certain parties are currently unaware," sat in my stomach like a stone. Certain parties. Brenda didn't know. I called the number in the email signature. A woman answered on the second ring. Whitmore and Associates. This is Joseph Vasquez. I received an email about Gerald Ward's estate. There was a pause. Then, Mr. Vasquez, thank you for calling so promptly. Can you come in tomorrow morning? 9 a.m. Can you tell me what this is about? Another pause. Mr. Vasquez, are you familiar with the River Oaks development project currently underway in the West Side District? My blood went cold. River Oaks. That was Brenda's husband's signature project. Marcus Holloway's billion-dollar masterpiece. The development that was supposed to be the crown jewel of his real estate empire. The project Brenda had been bragging about on social media for 18 months. I've heard of it, I said carefully. Then you're aware of its significance. Mr. Vasquez, Gerald Ward was a very strategic man. The land that development sits on, he bought it in 1987 for $40,000. Today, it's worth approximately $15 million, and that's just the land value, not including what's been built on it. But here's the complicated part. Your ex-wife believes she inherited it. Her husband has been building on it, believing his wife owned the deed. But Mr. Ward amended his will 6 months before his death. You, Mr. Vasquez, are the actual owner of that land. And nobody except me, my partner, and now you knows this. I couldn't breathe. The kitchen walls seemed to close in. Why me? He left a letter. You can read it tomorrow. But the short version? He said you were the only person who ever loved his daughter for who she was, not what she had. And when she chose money over you, he chose you over her. His exact words were, Joseph raised my grandsons with honor when their own mother couldn't be bothered. The land goes to the man who built character, not the woman who sold hers. I hung up 20 minutes later with an appointment scheduled and a truth I couldn't quite believe. Gerald Ward, the man Brenda dismissed as old-fashioned and out of touch, had just handed me the deed to her husband's entire empire. But more than that, he'd handed me something Brenda could never buy, vindication. The reunion invitation was sitting on my counter. Class of 2005 20-year reunion. The Grand Ballroom at Sterling Hotel. Brenda had been posting about it for weeks. Can't wait to show everyone how far I've come. She'd written under a photo of her and Marcus in front of a Maserati. I looked at my son's shoes. Then I looked at the invitation. Then I made a decision that would change everything. The Grand Ballroom at Sterling Hotel smells like expensive lilies and old insecurities. That's what hit me first when David, Andrew, and I walked through those doors. The air conditioning was set too cold, probably to keep the champagne chilled and the conversations icy. Everywhere I looked, I saw success. Designer suits, professional teeth, the kind of confidence that comes from never having to check your bank account before ordering appetizers. David tugged my sleeve. Dad, this is like a castle. This is where your mom and I met. I told him, keeping my voice steady. Junior year. She spilled punch on my shirt during the homecoming dance. Andrew looked around with wide eyes. Did she say sorry? I smiled to spite myself. Eventually, that's when I saw her. Brenda Ward, or Brenda Holloway now, I suppose, stood at the center of the room like a queen holding court. The red dress hugged her like a second skin, the kind of outfit that cost more than my monthly rent. Her hair was professionally styled, her makeup flawless. Next to her stood Marcus Holloway, tall and silver-haired, with the kind of tan that comes from Caribbean vacations, not construction sites. And then she saw me. I watched the calculation happen in real time. First, surprise, then recognition, then something that looked almost like fear, quickly masked by contempt. She excused herself from her circle and walked toward me with the precision of a missile. Marcus followed, because men like Marcus always follow their investments. Joseph, my name came out her mouth like an accusation. What are you doing here? I felt David press closer to my side. The boys want to see where we met. Reunions open to everyone, Brenda. Her eyes flicked to her sons, and I saw something shift in her expression. Not warmth. Assessment. David. Andrew. You've grown. The words were automatic, rehearsed. The voice of someone who knows she should care, but can't quite remember how. Hi, Mom, David said quietly. Andrew just nodded. Marcus extended his hand to me with the enthusiasm of someone touching a public restroom door handle. Marcus Holloway, you must be the ex-husband. I shook his hand. His grip was firm, practiced. Mine was firmer, earned. Joseph Vasquez. I must be. Brenda's laugh cut through the moment like glass breaking. Well, this is awkward, isn't it? Joseph, you should have told me you were coming. I would have prepared. Prepared what? A narrative for my colleagues. They're going to ask questions when they see you with the boys. There it was. Not concern for her children. Concern for her image. Marcus checked his Rolex. An obvious gesture meant to communicate his time's value. Brenda, darling, we should circulate. The Hendersons want to discuss the River Oaks viewing party. Brenda's eyes lit up. She turned to the growing crowd of curious onlookers, her voice rising just enough to carry. Oh, you haven't heard, Joseph? Marcus is revolutionizing the West Side. River Oaks is the most ambitious development this city has seen in decades. Luxury condos, commercial spaces, a private park. We're talking generational wealth. I felt the envelope in my pocket. Not yet. Sounds impressive. I said evenly, it is... She took a sip of champagne, and I could see the speech building behind her eyes. The one she'd been dying to deliver since the moment she saw me walk in. You know what the difference is between winners and losers, Joseph? Vision. You were always so comfortable with this. She gestured vaguely at me, at the boys, at our entire existence. Content with mediocrity. I needed more. I needed someone who understood that wealth isn't luck. It's a mindset. David's hand tightened on my jacket. I put my arm around both boys. That's an interesting philosophy. I said, what mindset teaches you to abandon your children? The crowd inhaled. Marcus stepped forward, but Brenda held up a hand. Her smile turned razor sharp. I didn't abandon anyone. I gave them stability. You're the one keeping them in that cramped apartment, shopping at thrift stores, teaching them that poverty is noble. Look at their shoes, Joseph. Look at their suits. You're stifling their potential with your limitations. Listen, if you've made it this far in the story, you're invested. You want to know what happens next. But here's the thing. Most people scroll past these stories without subscribing. They watch, they enjoy, and they disappear. If this story matters to you, if you actually care how it ends, hit that subscribe button, please. It takes 2 seconds. And if you don't, you'll probably forget about this channel and never hear any other amazing stories from me. Asterisk, asterisk. The room was silent now. Every eye was on us. I could feel my son's humiliation radiating like heat. This was the moment Brenda had orchestrated, the public execution of my dignity, the final proof that leaving me was the right choice. But what she didn't understand, what she couldn't understand, was that I'd learned something in 5 years of single fatherhood that all her wealth couldn't teach her: patience. I reached into my pocket. My hand closed around the envelope. Plain, white, ordinary. The same kind you can buy at any drugstore for $2.99. But the paper inside? That paper was going to rewrite Brenda's entire world. "You're right," I said quietly, and the room leaned in to hear me. "Wealth is a mindset. And Brenda, your mindset just cost you the only thing your father left behind that actually mattered." Her face froze. Marcus looked confused. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out the envelope slowly, deliberately. This wasn't about showmanship. It was about giving her time to remember, time to wonder, time to realize that her father, the man she dismissed as senile in his final years, might have had the last word after all. "Brenda, do you remember the last conversation you had with your father? Before he died?" Her eyes narrowed. "That's none of your business." "He called me," I continued, "2 months before he passed. We talked for 3 hours. He told me about the land in West Side, the 40 acres he bought when you were 7 years old. He said it was supposed to be your inheritance, your security. But then he said something that stuck with me. She'll sell for parts before the ink dries on my death certificate. She doesn't understand that some things are worth more than their price tag." Marcus grabbed Brenda's arm. "Brenda, what is he talking about? Your father left you his estate. We went through probate. The land was transferred." "The land was transferred," I agreed, "but not to who you think." I opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph and a folded legal document. I held up the photograph first. Gerald Ward, standing with his arms around 2 young boys, David and Andrew, taken 3 months before he died. A visit Brenda never knew about, because she never asked about her children's lives. "Your father flew out to see his grandsons," I said. "He wanted to know who was raising them. Since you couldn't be bothered, we spent a weekend at the park. He taught them how to fly a kite. He bought them ice cream. And he told me something I didn't understand until this week. Joseph, I'm going to make sure the right man has a foundation to build something real." Brenda's face had gone pale. "You're lying. The land is in my name. We verified." "You verified a transfer," I corrected, "from Gerald Ward's estate to a beneficiary. But did you actually read the deed, Brenda? Or did you just assume?" I unfolded the legal document. The header read, "Warranty deed, River Oaks property, West Side District." I turned it so she could see the key line, highlighted by the attorney. "Grantee, Joseph Michael Vasquez, as trustee and sole beneficiary." The room exploded in whispers. Marcus snatched the paper from my hands, his eyes scanning frantically. His face transformed from confusion to rage to something that looked like seasickness. "This can't be legal," he hissed. "We've been building for 18 months. We have permits. We have financing. The land records show a transfer to a beneficiary of Gerald Ward," I said. "That beneficiary was me. Your permits were filed against fraudulent ownership claims. Your financing was secured with collateral you don't actually possess." Brenda's voice came out as a whisper. "Daddy wouldn't. He loved me. He did love you. I agreed. That's why he spent the last 6 months of his life watching you choose Marcus's money over your own children. He loved you enough to hope you'd change. And when you didn't, he loved your sons enough to give them something you never could, a father who wouldn't sell their future for a luxury car. Marcus was on his phone now, barking orders at someone. Brenda just stood there, her champagne glass trembling in her hand. The ballroom had gone from silent to buzzing, everyone whispering, pointing, recording. David tugged my sleeve again. Dad, what does this mean? I knelt down to his level, ignoring the 200 people watching. It means Grandpa Gerald believed in us. It means we're going to be okay. Are we rich now? Andrew asked, his eyes wide. And this is where it gets complicated. This is where I have to tell you the truth about revenge, about justice, about what it really means to win. No, buddy, I said softly. We're not rich. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But we're something better. Brenda found her voice. It came out sharp, desperate. You can't do this. I'll sue you. This is fraud. My father wasn't in his right mind. Marcus, call Thompson, call. Your father was evaluated by 3 separate physicians in the month before he amended his will. I said, standing up, all declared him a sound mind. He knew exactly what he was doing. And Brenda? I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something I hadn't felt in 5 years. Pity. He included a letter. Do you want to know what it says? She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her entire identity was crumbling, and everyone was watching. I pulled out one more piece of paper, a handwritten letter, Gerald's shaky script filling the page. I read aloud. To my daughter Brenda. If you're reading this, it means Joseph has claimed what I left him, and you're finally understanding the price of your choices. I don't blame you for wanting more than I could give you. I blame you for not recognizing that you already had everything. Joseph gave you loyalty. Your sons gave you purpose. And you traded it all for a man who sees you as an asset, not a person. The land goes to Joseph not because I stopped loving you, but because I never stopped loving David and Andrew. They deserve a foundation built on something more than greed. Maybe someday you'll understand that. Love, Dad. The silence that followed was absolute. But here's the question nobody in that room was asking, and it's the question that matters most. What was I going to do now? I folded the letter back into the envelope. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I'd spent 3 days since that meeting with the attorneys thinking about this moment, planning what I'd say, imagining how it would feel to watch Brenda realize that the universe has a sense of irony. But standing there with my sons gripping my jacket and 200 people holding their breath, I felt something unexpected. Exhaustion, not the physical kind. I've been exhausted for 5 years, working double shifts and cooking mac and cheese at midnight. This was different. This was the exhaustion of carrying anger so long that even vindication feels heavy. Marcus was still on his phone, but his voice had dropped to a panic whisper. Brenda hadn't moved. She stood frozen, her champagne glass still raised halfway to her lips, a statue of everything she thought she'd escaped. Someone in the crowd, one of our former classmates, broke the silence. So what happens now? You're going to evict them? Shut down the construction? I looked at the man who'd asked. Rick somebody. He used to copy my math homework. Now, he probably owned 3 houses. I haven't decided. I said honestly. You haven't decided? Marcus spun toward me. his phone forgotten. You're holding a $15 million property hostage, and you haven't decided? Do you understand what you're doing? I have $200 million in committed capital. I have contracts. I have investors. You can't just... I kept my voice level. That's the interesting thing about ownership, Marcus. It comes with rights. And according to the attorneys, you've been building on my property without my permission for 18 months, which means technically anything built on that land belongs to me. Or I could sue you for trespassing and damages. Or, and this is the option they seem most excited about, I could negotiate. His eyes narrowed. You want money? No, I said, and I meant it. I want something you can't buy. Brenda finally spoke, her voice hollow. What could you possibly want that we haven't already taken from you? I looked at my sons. Then I looked back at her. I want you to understand what your father was trying to teach you. I want you to see what you sacrificed for all this. I gestured around the ballroom, at the chandeliers and the champagne and the designer dresses. And I want my sons to learn something neither of us taught them yet. What's that? David asked quietly. That winning isn't about destroying people. It's about being the kind of person who doesn't need to. The words hung in the air like a challenge. I could see people in the crowd nodding, whispering. This wasn't the story they'd expected. This wasn't the revenge drama they'd been hoping to record and share. Here's what's going to happen, I said, addressing Marcus directly now. Tomorrow morning, you and I are going to sit down with our attorneys. We're going to work out an agreement. You're going to acknowledge that you built on my land without permission, and then we're going to discuss terms. Terms, Marcus repeated flatly. The River Oaks development continues, but 30% of the profits go into a trust fund for David and Andrew. Another 20% funds a scholarship program for kids from single-parent households. Your investors get their returns. You get your reputation. And my sons get the financial security their mother should have provided. Brenda's champagne glass slipped from her hand. It shattered on the marble floor, crystal exploding outward like stars. Nobody moved to clean it up. You're giving it back? She whispered. After all this, you're just giving it back? I'm not giving anything back. I corrected. I'm teaching my sons that revenge is empty, but responsibility is permanent. They're going to grow up knowing their grandfather believed in something more than balance sheets. They're going to understand that real wealth isn't what you own. It's what you build that outlasts you. Marcus was already calculating. I could see it in his eyes. He was a businessman, and businessmen understand deals. 30% is absurd. I could offer 10%, spread over 20 years. 30%, I repeated, non-negotiable. And if you refuse, I shut down the entire project tomorrow and sue you for every brick you laid on my property. Your choice. He understood. Men like Marcus always understand the language of leverage. But Brenda was experiencing something different. I watched her face cycle through emotions she probably hadn't felt in years. Shame, regret, recognition. She looked at David and Andrew, really looked at them, and I saw her see the children she left behind. The sons who'd grown 4 inches without her. The boys who'd learned to tie their ties from YouTube tutorials because their mother was too busy building an empire on sand. I didn't know, she said finally, about Daddy's letter, about what he thought of me. He didn't think poorly of you, I said, and this time my voice was gentler. He just hoped you'd remember what mattered before it was too late. Is it? Her eyes met mine, really met them for the first time all night. Too late? I looked down at David and Andrew. That's not up to me. David, my serious, thoughtful David, stepped forward. He'd been silent through all of this, watching, processing. When he spoke, his voice was clear and steady. Mom, Dad's been teaching us something. He says that people can make mistakes, but what matters is whether they learn from them. He says grudges are heavy, and we're not strong enough to carry them our whole lives. Andrew nodded. He also says you can't buy back time, but you can invest in the future. Is that what you want, Mom? To invest in our future? Brenda's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the tears anymore. She nodded, unable to speak. The crowd was silent again, but this time it was different. This wasn't the silence of scandal. It was the silence of witnesses. Marcus cleared his throat. Fine, 30%. But I want this in writing by Monday. You'll have it, I said. Then I turned to the boys. Come on, we've seen the palace. Time to go home. As we walked toward the exit, Brenda called out, Joseph? I turned. Thank you, she said, for being better than I deserved. I didn't respond. Some statements don't need replies. The boys were quiet on the drive home. We didn't have Marcus's Maserati. We had my 2015 Honda Civic with the crack in the windshield and the passenger seat that didn't adjust anymore. But as we pulled away from the Sterling Hotel, with its valet parking and its fountains and its concentration of everything we supposedly lacked, I felt richer than I had in years. David broke the silence first. Dad, are we really going to get money from the development? Eventually, I said, but it's not going to change how we live tomorrow or next week, or probably even next year. Money that big comes slow, and it comes with responsibilities. Like what? Andrew asked. Like learning how to manage it. Like understanding that it's a tool, not a trophy. Like making sure it builds something instead of just buying things. I pulled into our apartment complex. The parking lot light was out again. Mrs. Chen's cat was sitting on our doorstep. Everything was exactly as we left it. Small, imperfect, and ours. Inside, I made us hot chocolate. The cheap powdered kind, not the gourmet stuff Brenda probably served at her parties. We sat at our kitchen table, the same table where I glued Andrew's shoe and read the email that changed everything. I need you both to understand something, I said, wrapping my hands around my mug. What happened tonight wasn't about winning. Your mom didn't lose, and I didn't win. What happened was a lesson about consequences. Consequences. David frowned. You mean like punishment? No. Consequences aren't punishment. They're just the natural result of choices. Your mom chose money over family. Her consequence was losing both the money and the family. Her father chose to protect his grandsons. His consequence was giving them a future, even after he was gone. I chose to stay and raise you instead of chasing wealth. My consequence was 5 years of struggle, but also 5 years of knowing I did the right thing. Andrew was quiet for a moment. Then, what's our consequence? For being your sons. The question hit me harder than anything Brenda had said. I set down my mug. Your consequence is that you get to choose what kind of men you become. You're going to have opportunities now. College funds, connections, resources. But the lesson you need to learn from tonight is this: those opportunities are worthless if you forget where they came from. David nodded slowly. Grandpa Gerald gave us the money because you gave us everything else. Exactly. Your grandfather understood something that a lot of people spend their whole lives missing. Wealth without character is just expensive emptiness. You can have a mansion and be miserable. You can have $1 million and be meaningless. But if you build your life on integrity, on love, on putting people before profit, that's a foundation that never cracks. Is that why you didn't just take the money and kick Marcus out? Andrew asked. Partially. But mostly, I made that deal because I wanted you to see that power is a responsibility, not a toy. I could have destroyed your mother's husband. I could have taken everything and made them beg. And you know what? It would have felt good for about 10 minutes. Then it would have felt hollow. Because revenge doesn't build anything. It just tears down. I stood up and walked to the refrigerator, where I kept the important documents, birth certificates, Social Security cards, and now a copy of Gerald Ward's deed and letter. I brought them back to the table. This, I said, tapping the deed, is your inheritance, but not because of the dollar amount. It's your inheritance because it represents a choice. Your grandfather chose character. I chose my children. And now you get to choose. What kind of legacy will you build with the foundation we gave you? The boys were silent, processing. These were big concepts for 12-year-olds. I knew. But I'd learned that kids understand more than we give them credit for, especially when the lesson comes with lived experience instead of lectures. Finally, David said, I think I get it. It's like in math class. You can't build a strong equation on a weak foundation. If your base is wrong, everything after it falls apart. I smiled. Exactly. Your mom built her life on a foundation of money. And when the money shifted, everything crumbled. But if you build on values, honesty, hard work, compassion, those don't shift. Those stay solid no matter what happens to your bank account. Andrew looked at the glued shoe still sitting on the counter. So you gluing my shoe, that was you teaching us the value foundation? No, I laughed. That was me being too broke to buy new shoes. But the lesson you learned from it, that broken things can be fixed, that caring hands matter more than deep pockets. That's the value foundation. Dad, David's voice was serious now. Are you glad Grandpa Gerald gave you the land? Or do you wish this never happened? It was a fair question. A hard question. I thought about the last 5 years. The exhaustion, the struggles, the nights I'd lain awake wondering if I was doing enough. Then I thought about tonight, about watching my sons stand tall while their mother crumbled, about the dignity they'd shown in the face of humiliation. I'm glad, I said finally, not because of the money. That's just a bonus. I'm glad because you both just learned something that most people never figure out. Wealth is a test, not a reward. And the real measure of a person is what they do with power when they have it. Tonight, you saw me choose mercy over revenge. You saw me choose education over destruction. And I hope someday, when you have power of your own, you'll remember this moment. The boys finished their hot chocolate. Andrew yawned. David's eyes were drooping. It was past midnight, way past their bedtime. But some lessons can't wait for convenient hours. Come on, I said. Let's get you both to bed. As they brushed their teeth and changed into their pajamas, I sat on David's bed and thought about Gerald Ward's letter. The old man had seen something in me that I'd barely seen in myself. The stubborn refusal to compromise on what mattered, even when compromise would have been easier. The boys climbed into their respective beds. We'd moved them into separate rooms last year, a milestone I've been proud of, even though the rooms were really just one room divided by a curtain. Someday, maybe, they'd have actual separate bedrooms. Someday, they might have a house with a yard. But tonight, in this moment, we had something no mansion could provide. We had peace. Dad. Andrew called from his side of the curtain. What do you think Mom's doing right now? I thought about Brenda, probably sitting in her luxury apartment, probably fighting with Marcus, probably realizing for the first time in years that she traded something irreplaceable for something temporary. I think she's learning, I said. Sometimes the best lessons come from the hardest losses. Do you think she'll change? David asked. I don't know. But what I do know is that whether she changes or not isn't our responsibility. Our responsibility is to be the kind of men who make changing seem possible, to be the kind of people who extend grace even when it's not deserved, because that's what Grandpa Gerald did for us. Silence settled over the apartment. After a few minutes, I could hear the steady breathing that meant they were asleep. I walked back to the kitchen, cleaned up the hot chocolate mugs, and sat down at my table one more time. The envelope was still there, the deed, the letter, the photograph. Tomorrow, I'd meet with Marcus's attorneys. We'd hammer out the details of the trust fund, the scholarship program, the terms that would govern the next chapter of all our lives. There would be complications. There always are when money and family intersect. There would be legal battles. Probably Brenda wouldn't disappear gracefully from boys' lives, and that would bring its own challenges. But tonight I'd taught my sons the most important lesson I knew, that integrity isn't what you do when you have nothing to lose. It's what you do when you have everything to gain by doing the wrong thing, and you choose the right thing anyway. Gerald Ward had given me a gift, not the land, not the money. He'd given me the opportunity to prove to my sons and to myself that 5 years of struggling hadn't been wasted, that choosing them over everything else had been worth it, that the foundation we'd built together could support any weight, carry any burden, weather any storm. I picked up the photograph of Gerald with the boys. In the picture, they're all laughing. Andrew is holding a kite. David is eating ice cream. Gerald's hand is on both their shoulders. The same gesture I've made 100 times, 1,000 times, every day of their lives. Thank you, I whispered to the old man in the photograph, for seeing what she couldn't, for believing when I doubted, for teaching me that legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's what you live forward. I placed the photograph back in the envelope and put it in the safe box under my bed. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. But tonight, in our small apartment with our second-hand furniture and our glued-together shoes, we were rich in the only currency that matters. We were rich in each other, and no amount of money could ever buy that back once you'd sold it. So here's the real question. Did you subscribe yet? Thousands of people will listen to this story and won't subscribe. Please don't be that person. Kindly support what I do here by subscribing. And then drop in the comment section if you'd like to hear more stories about redemption, integrity, and what it means to truly win in life. What lessons has life taught you about wealth versus character? Let me know in the comments below. Asterisk, asterisk. Educational ending breakdown asterisk. This story teaches several critical life lessons that resonate with American values while remaining universally applicable. 1. Integrity outlasts income asterisk. Joseph could have destroyed Brenda and Marcus. Instead, he chose a path that provided for his children while teaching them that power should be used responsibly. This demonstrates that our character defines us more than our circumstances. 2. Legacy is actions, not assets asterisk. Gerald Ward's true legacy wasn't a land. It was a lesson he taught about valuing people over possessions. The deed was just a tool to deliver that message. 3. Revenge is empty. Redemption is full asterisk. Joseph's choice to negotiate rather than destroy showed his sons that victory isn't about defeating enemies. It's about rising above the conflict entirely. 4. Poverty doesn't equal powerlessness asterisk. 5 years of financial struggle didn't break Joseph. It refined him. This teaches that our response to hardship matters more than the hardship itself. 5. Children learn what they live asterisk. David and Andrew didn't just hear a lecture about values. They witnessed their father living them under pressure. This is the most powerful form of education.